It is 6:30 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting of the Community Development Committee to order. While this meeting is being held in person in consideration of the ongoing COVID-19 health concerns, we are offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionks.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember, your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you are part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand and stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please state your name and the city of residence for the record. Also, please be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionks.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions. First, we have a revised agenda for the evening. Ms. Smith, will you please share the proposed agenda changes with us? No problem. No, actually, yeah, it didn't even say that on here. I was just thinking of a different time. So, all right. Emily, please call the roll.
Ryherd. Here. Thomas. Davis.
Here.
Kring. Here. Inman. Chosey.
Here.
Loudon. Here. Boldinghouse.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Our first item of business this evening is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now? Any online? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to public presentations. We do have one public presentation this evening for a proposed 3-story apartment complex at the southwest corner of 58 and Knoll. Mr. Scott, will you please introduce the developer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have with us tonight John Moffit. He's a realtor and developer here in the Kansas City area. And he has purchased the property at the southwest corner of 58th and Knoll. There's essentially 4 parcels. 5555 West 58th Street is the old Sunflower Medical Office building. And he's purchased 3 other parcels of property just to the south along Knoll. And he's proposing to build a 3-story apartment complex. That's approximately 77 units. So he is here tonight to introduce himself to you all and talk a little bit about his project. And I think his architect is here as well to kind of go over the preliminary plans. This will be before the Planning Commission in June. And then we'll follow up with you all in July. Or no, excuse me, it'll be the May Planning Commission meeting and then the City Council in June. So, John?
Thank you all for having us here tonight. I'm John Moffit. I am a 2nd-generation Kansas City native. I grew up, started sweeping out houses at 12 years old for my father. I've been on framing crews. I've hung drywall. I have a college degree in real estate and construction management. Our firm has been doing this for, like I said, myself, at least 40 years. Today, we have an opportunity to take a site that is somewhat underserved relative to the demand for residential housing. We're trying to hit the missing middle. And this site in our firm, I gave you all a little packet on our firm. The magazine is the Artisan Home magazine, which was a fundraiser through the Kansas City HBA for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. The house on the cover is one of my houses. And then in the envelope was another handout called Mojo Built, which talks about myself and my partner, Joe Woods, Kansas State graduate, who's been with me for probably 15 years. And so that's a little bit meet and greet so you know who we are and who you're working with. I'm going to turn it over to Henry Clover of Clover Architects to give you the particulars of this project. But the thing I want you to know is this: we've always prided ourselves in quality, not quantity. We're not trying to be the biggest. We're not trying to be all over. We try and execute at the best level possible, the best value we can give, and we create homes and communities for people. And that's our reputation. That's why we succeeded for all these years. And we're pleased to be a part of the City of Mission. Henry?
With the presentation. Henry Clover, Clover Architects. Very much my pleasure to be in front of you again today. It was a much smaller room the last time I was in front of you, though. Don't know if you're new, but I was also the architect for this lovely project behind us, which we're very, very proud of. And don't know if you know it, but one of the owners actually moved into it for a period of time. It was in the penthouse on the corner. So the presentation is in front of you. The project is described as on the corner of Knoll and 58th Street between Maple. It is the commercial buildings today. There's the clinic that's there today. So can I move? Next slide, please. I didn't know if I had that capability or not. Understood. There's an existing utility line that runs easement through the middle, so the building is broken in two parts. The leasing office will be in the lower right corner as you see it, which is on the southeast corner, which would be the leasing office. The will be a mixture of studios, one bedrooms with den, and a limited number of 2 bedrooms. It is going to be 3-story, and it also will be tuck under parking, but the parking is all going to be behind the building. So what you'll see from the front is addressing the building to the street in a very more walkable urban environment that you would see. The goal is to have it be more of a farmhouse type design. The trash is internal to the building. In the inside corner will be a fitness room. There will be amenities such as bike storage that will be there as well. Next slide, please. This is an image and a rendering from the southeast corner. We wanted some type of element, so those will be like living rooms above, but we wanted an element to draw people's attention. It is obviously just off of Johnson Drive. It's very close to the commercial and it's intended to be a strong element on that corner. What you're seeing is the street frontage, the garages are all internal and the parking is all internal, with the exception of the parallel parking along the front, which would be primarily for visitors. Next slide, please. This is a view from the opposite corner. You can see the leasing entrance on the very left corner, but this rendering needs to be updated. There will be sidewalks installed all the way around it, so it will be very walkable and will engage the street and the public. Again, it is intended to be a what we call the farmhouse type look, which is a little bit old but contemporary all at the same time. We really like and have been very successful as obviously as across the street of trying to integrate imagery and have it be an exciting and new element. Next slide, please. This is to give you a flavor. We're not actually seeking any LEED or green globes, but obviously we are going to incorporate a lot of elements into it. We've asked the landscape architect to provide for limited native plants that would require less maintenance and taking care of. Obviously, we'll have, paths and we'll encourage bicycle, that we will have bicycle storage and bicycle repair. It's pretty much what we do in most of our projects. Obviously, we'll set up for big thing nowadays is EVs charging stations, and we'll set it up so that it's very easily to add as they go. A lot of our projects we're putting in a lot of conduits to make sure they can be added in the future as well. Because this is a changing environment. It's very close to the bus access. Obviously right there, really close. All lights will be, daylight or dark sky capable, which means their lights are pushed down. They're not, light pollution. And then believe me, I know, because Westar's put these big lights that I see from my bedroom every night on top of this station, and it's annoying because it just goes everywhere. We will manage construction. There will be recycling. All the trash is going to be internal to the building. In the corner, there's actually a station where the trash will be kept inside the building, so it's not going to be exposed. As you might typically see, we'll have obviously Energy Star. We'll improve insulation. The big thing too nowadays with COVID is putting UV lights and improving filtration and things like that, particularly in the common areas. And so we're going to push that envelope as well. And obviously, there's going to be maintenance and staff training on how to maintain things. As John said, the primary goal is to fill a market niche to provide for that housing that's missing. And the funny part is my assistant who just left to go out and become an entrepreneur of his own lives real close to here, and he was actually excited about it because he's like, I got someplace I can move to. So for that, that's basically the quick overview of what we're intending to proceed with, and we're happy to stand and answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for the developer and Mr. Scott?
Hi, thanks so much for coming. It's interesting to have you, interesting to see your renderings. It's nice. Could you describe affordable for us? What are your affordable apartments and what price range?
That's more of a question for the developer than.
Sure.
You probably need to be.
Our intention would be to be at least 10% below the current market. We'd like to be 15. There's one huge fluctuation right now, and that is the cost of lumber, the cost of steel, the cost of construction in general. So I would love to stand here and be able to give you a firm number, but right now I can't. But based on everything that we're going through, and we don't have our final drawings done yet, and the numbers we've crunched, we're pretty confident at the back end we can be at least 10% below the building in back of us. And our goal would be to hit closer to 15. I don't know if that's realistic. So if you look at, $1,800 a square foot, that means a $1,600 unit. If you look at a 1,200 studio, that's $1,000. So it's an impact that makes a difference.
Sure. Thanks so much. That's helpful. And then in our packet, the rendering had a leasing office, what looked like a sign. Was that more just to indicate where the leasing office would be, or are you intending on having those signs that say leasing on both sides illuminated?
I don't think we'll be putting that signage up. I think this rendering does not have that
Right.
signage.
Okay, fantastic. I'm glad to hear that.
We stick those on renderings all the time. So.
Sure. And then I had one more question for Brian. Brian, if you're able, where's the nearest homes to this? I meant to drive by on my way in tonight, and I'm just wondering where the closest houses are.
In fact, you can just see one. So it's just north on 58th Street. As you drive north and all, you get into the residential neighborhood. So, yeah, basically 58th and all north. And that's right at the border with Roland Park.
Okay.
So we'll be sending out notices to all those within 200 feet of that property, which will include folks in Roland Park.
Okay. Thank you.
Which makes this a great transition piece, because if you look at the density on Johnson Drive in the commercial, then you get a step of our townhomes, and then you go into the single family. So for the adjacent community of Roland Park, it's complementary to what they could have, considering they have office buildings and parking lots that are on 58th and on Knoll now. So their streetscape will be improved 1,000%.
Okay. Great. Thank you both.
I have a question.
Yeah, Debbie?
I would ask for the new people, I don't know if they have the copy of the comprehensive listing of all the apartments we currently have in 2.5 square miles. I would ask that that email be sent back to all the council. This is 77 more on top of the hundreds that we currently have. I'm not taking away from you. I just think we need a whole picture before we're going through 3 apartment complexes right now. That has nothing to do with you, but it's something for people to be witness of how many apartments we currently have in Mission.
It amazes me, the demand, and we don't create markets, we serve markets. I want to be real clear, as a developer my entire life, the way that we become successful is to identify a market and serve it. And the demand for this product is unbelievable right now. So the market exists. I mean, if the market was a different product, that's what we've been doing.
Sorry, I'm back. Do you all intend on seeking incentives from the city for this project? Is that a conversation we're at yet?
We've had some very, very preliminary discussions about the possibility of using IRBs, industrial revenue bonds, for the sales tax exemption, just to help with some, again, the rising cost of construction. So this kind of helps them a little bit with that. So, but that's a very preliminary discussion at this point.
Yeah.
You said that you weren't going to be seeking any sort of LEED certifications, but are you using sustainability in your construction?
The list that we have, and we're going to put back out and return the checklist. And there will be items that we will do that are part of it, but we're not actually seeking an actual certification because there is a cost associated with that.
Ben, yeah.
What's your FAR target for this? Is it about 2 floor area ratio? Looking at the plans, just ballpark.
I don't have that off the top of my
Okay.
head, but I can investigate it for you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
One quick one. Where are we on the rezoning application?
So the rezoning will be in conjunction with this in front of the planning commission in May. So that's kind of a dual process of the same, we'll parallel those two at the same time.
Okay.
And I should have mentioned too, that we have a neighborhood meeting next Monday evening at 6:30 in this room. So again, we've noticed all those folks within 200 feet of the property. And we've invited them to come to an informal neighborhood meeting to hear this presentation and to ask any questions. I forgot to mention that earlier. So neighborhood meeting on the 9th, planning commission meeting on the 23rd. Hopefully the city council on the 18th of June. I think that's right. 15th of June, okay. Any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Brian, for the update. All right, next we have information on the updates to the Arby's restaurant and the preliminary and final plats. Mr. Scott, could you please provide your report to that one too?
Okay, we had a planning commission meeting. I can't remember what, end of April. It's been a long winter. And one of the items we had on there was approval of preliminary and final plat of Barkley Corner, 6780 Johnson Drive. And that is the Arby's property. Arby's is making updates to all their restaurants, kind of updating their brand and their look. And so they're wanting to make updates to the Arby's restaurant here in Mission because that's in the form-based code district that requires, it's called a non-conforming situation permit. So they went before the planning commission to receive their non-conforming situation permit, which basically means that we acknowledge it's not going to fully conform to the form-based code, but we're going to try to get there as much as we can with landscaping and materials that are used and things like a bike rack and those type of things. But in conjunction with that, we also had the preliminary and final plat. That property is not platted. And so in the plating, we asked them to donate an extra foot of right-of-way along Johnson Drive. In the future, we'll be doing some improvements to Johnson Drive. We'd like to widen the sidewalk to 8 feet wide. So that extra foot will provide us the ability to widen the sidewalk and then a little bit extra in the back end. And then we also identified a storm sewer running along the east border of the property. So we asked for a drainage easement for that storm sewer. So that's what's reflected in the preliminary and final plat. We'll be kind of accepting both in a couple of weeks at the planning commission. So we'll just take that under planning commission action. And if you all approve, then that should be it.
Yeah, I saw Ken first, then Debbie.
Brian, is the storm sewer one of our inventoried storm sewers, and what's its status? Do you know?
It is an inventory storm sewer, but I'm gonna have to get back on names to take a look at what the condition is.
Yeah, I'm just curious if they're going to do work there, whether it would make sense to try to update it before it collapses if it is at
Yeah, and
risk.
unfortunately, I didn't know about this pipe until we found it on Ames, is that there's a portion that goes up into the neighborhood, residential properties to the north. We don't have any easement on that one.
Thank you.
I'll check into that. for you.
They're not doing any improvements in the parking lot itself, so it wouldn't be like an opportunity to go in there and replace it while they're making improvements, so.
Debbie. Debbie's next, then you, Hillary.
Signage, no pole sign, right?
No, they're removing their pole sign.
Thank you.
They're gonna replace it with a monument sign.
Brian, that area is a pretty tree deserted area of town. I'm just wondering if they mentioned improving any landscaping or adding any trees.
We asked them about adding trees, and they brought up a very good point. There's a water main that runs along Johnson Drive, basically under that green space that's in front of the building right now. So trees and water mains don't get along very well. And so we've asked them to put some bushes around the parking lot, which is one of the requirements of our code, is to kind of create some type of visual barrier between the parking lot and the sidewalk or those that are driving by. So they will do that to kind of screen that parking lot a little bit.
Anyone else have questions for Brian? Yeah, Ken?
Are they gonna have that drive-through the same way it is now? Do they have any, yeah, in the same position? It's a bit of a complicated drive-through.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And you've got to see a perfect drive-through.
Yeah, Hillary?
Are they still gonna have the 5 for 5? I'm
know.
sorry, I had to.
After you finish these improvements, maybe not. I don't know.
Still missing the big Montana myself, but any other questions for Brian? All right, thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Next, we will move into our action items. Our first action item this evening is the acceptance from the meeting minutes with Emily Randall.
Yes, thank you. On Audrey McClanahan's behalf, I'd present the meeting minutes for the April meeting for your acceptance and review.
Any recommendations, Ken?
Recommend acceptance.
Everyone okay with that? All right. The second item is consideration of a request for a waiver to store a small pop-up camper trailer in the side yard of the property at 6190 West 52nd Street from Brian Scott.
Mr. and Mrs. Younger are the owners of the home at 6190 West 52nd Street. Our neighborhood services officer, Becca Brown, was doing kind of a routine drive through the area back in the winter and noticed that they have a small pop-up camper stored next to their garage, which normally that would be okay, but it's a corner lot. So the code requires that any kind of campers, boats, anything like that be stored behind the front property line. Because it's a corner lot, it essentially has two front property lines. So it has to be stored basically in their backyard or on the other side of the house. And there's some photographs in your packet. The north side of the property, or kind of the northeast side of the property, where it's adjacent to another home. It's a very small area, kind of steep terrain, which doesn't make it conducive to storing the camper. And then the backyard is very shallow, and there's just not much space to store the camper back there either. So they requested that they be given a waiver. And this is a little bit new to all of us. I had to look through the code and kind of understand this a little bit. Essentially, the city council can grant a waiver of 1 year, but that's done after a public hearing. And with the public hearing, the property owners within 200 feet of the property have to be noticed of the public hearing. And then there's an opportunity for any of the property owners to actually provide a protest in writing to the city clerk before the public hearing. And if that protest is provided, then the vote has to be a 2/3 vote. I think even higher than that. I'm gonna call it a super majority vote, a 3/4 vote. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. We've explained this to Mrs. Younger, and she's good with going ahead and having a public hearing. So we're going to schedule that for the meeting on the 18th. And we'll send out notices tomorrow to all the property owners. And then you guys can make a decision that night. And then if you're in favor of granting the waiver, I've gone ahead and prepared a resolution that you could adopt that night, outline the provisions of the waiver. So, that's it.
All right. Yeah, Debbie?
Does the waiver have a term on it, or is it just in?
1 year.
For just 1 year?
Yeah.
And then what happens at the end of the year?
That's a good question. I guess she has to come back and ask for another waiver. Or we're going to try to encourage her to plant some bushes or something around the camper just to kind of conceal a little bit.
What size is the camper? Do we know?
It's small.
It's small.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably less than 10 feet long and about 6 feet wide and probably about as tall as this podium. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Where is it? That's it? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, they got a little kind of storage shed back in the corner, and they got a child swing and a little seating area out back. Yeah. Oh, I see it. Yes, that's been moved. Yeah. 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 Yes, I see it now.
Brian, has there been any discussion about possibly looking at some storage offsite?
We haven't discussed that with her.
Have they given any reason why they've not looked at that option?
No, I haven't asked her. I could, but yeah, I haven't asked her why. That might be a good question to ask her during the public hearing. Or why she can't store it in the garage. I would assume she's got too much in her garage that prohibits her from storing it
Yeah.
in there. So,
How many other waivers have you ever done like this?
this will be the first one, but I'm going to tell you, there's lots of examples like this all over town. And I imagine we'll probably have more. So, we've
So
got-
does this set a precedent that we don't want to set?
Well, maybe not that as much as we have to figure out what we want to do for a general solution instead of public hearings every time. That's what my next question. What, do we have any affordance in the code for screening or any alternative for folks in this situation?
Well, we try to encourage people to put it in the backyard behind a fence, or in this case, we'll encourage her to screen it with bushes or something like that if she can't put a fence up. Yeah, storing it off-site can be costly at times. Yeah, I think it's really community preference and aesthetics. Probably the reason why this ordinance was created 20 years ago or more was to enforce some standard of aesthetics. Those things can be a little bit unsightly. Yeah, but standards today might be a little bit different. That's really a community choice. I can't really say one way or the other.
I do like the idea of having the 1 year deadline for the time being. Perhaps, we could have them use that time to try to come up with an alternative. In the meantime, it's not something that we're just springing on them. I do know this family. They're a nice family, and I'd like to try to give them some buffer time to find something out, that would work for everybody involved. Perhaps that 1 year would be enough time for them to get to a solution.
That may be the intent when the ordinance was written, just for that reason. Yeah.
So this is our own ordinance, not like IRC or something?
No, yeah, this is ours.
Okay.
Yep. Mhm. Yep. Thank you.
Laura, do we need to make a preference on which part of the agenda that goes to? that item? Okay. Got it. Okay. Sounds good. All right, the third item is a recommendation for a design contract for the 2023 street preservation program from Celia Durant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, that we have 3 streets that we were hoping to construct in 2022 that have been 60% designed, and based on, we thought that we wouldn't be able to complete those due to the costs. And so those will be included in our 2023 program. We'd also like to add 61st Terrace from Lamar to Woodson for design and potential construction in 2023. This street is one of the worst residential streets in town, which there's a lot of them, but it has less than 2 inches of asphalt and a really low pavement condition index of 24.3 on a scale from 1 to 100. So we think that if we need to get this street done before it falls apart. I included in the packet that, the construction estimate currently is at over 2.4 million, and we currently allocate 2 million for streets. So probably to get all these streets done, we will have to utilize stormwater funds from Johnson County, the savings that we had from this year's bid, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. But we'll go ahead and design it, and then it may be a bid alternate, or maybe another street would be a bid alternate. So we just need to see how the costs come out when we get into design. This would be a full depth reconstruction street, and the total cost is $152,094, which when I first got it, I was just like, that's way too high. But after talking to Olson, that includes the permitting, the bid documents, the bid and construction phase services for all 4 streets. And then there's over $40,000 for modeling and design of 2 reinforced concrete box culverts. The west culvert, the house on the south side of the street, on the west side, is in a shaded zone X floodplain. And so the watershed master plan and just engineering design, they recommend that we remove that house from the floodplain by widening the box culvert, which, as Ken pointed out, there's a lot of big mature trees. So, that's something we'll have to work through with design. Right now, the size is we would, a preliminary size, we'd update it. We'd just increase it slightly, but we need to get into design. But there's some money in there to do the modeling and the permitting. And then after talking to Council Member Davis last meeting, we talked about if you've been through there and you see the fancy stone head wall on the culverts, and can you replace those? And it's really costly for us to get a mason in there to do it. So I talked to the engineer, and they included $10,000 extra for design of some options. And one thing they talked about, and what we would do is, if you agree to that, we'll get them to show some concepts to see, and then we need to look at what the cost is to do that. But they would put in columns on each side, extend the wall up, and it wouldn't be a stone wall, but it would be a decorative stone that looks like stone. And we have some on Broadmoor, a little piece, and you see those on retaining walls that look like stone, but they're kind of a slip liner. So that's kind of what we're recommending there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Can you repeat what you said about the floodplain situation on the south side?
So that house on the on the west side of the creek, south of the street,
Yes.
is in the shaded zone X floodplain. And so they would recommend us widening the culvert that goes underneath there to remove the house from the floodplain.
Okay. I was thinking that you were suggesting the house needed to be removed. And I
No,
thought.
we're not
I
doing that.
thought- I didn't think I wanted to face that one with the owner.
Right, right. Well, I'm glad we clarified that.
Any other questions for Celia?
I'd like to recommend that we take this to council.
All right.
I don't know, do you want to do it regular agenda?
Yeah, I was going to say regular, perhaps to highlight to residents this work. It's something they would appreciate. All right, thank you, Celia.
Thank you.
I do think you're up for the next one too. We have a contract award for the Johnson Drive Rehabilitation Project.
So this is our 2022 CARS project. We're really excited to get it going, as I know that you all are as well. So we originally were planning to bid it in January when costs are hopefully low while the contractors are trying to figure out what projects they're going to have. But Roland Park was having, they needed to work through getting some easements on their side of the project. And so they just now got all the easements. So we're finally bidding it. We received 2 bids, and McInerney Construction was the low and most responsive bidder. And so we're recommending approval. Their cost is about 2.5% higher than the engineer's estimate. And, you know, it could be inflation of material, or it could be when we looked at the bid items, we noticed that their traffic control was a lot higher than the engineer estimated. And there won't be any complete lane closures, but there will be lane drops in one lane as they work and do the concrete down as they move down the street. So there's a lot of that. So I think that may be the reason it's a little bit higher. Our portion is after CARS funding is with construction and inspection is about almost $550,000. And that's about 20,000 over our budget. And I think what happened here is that we originally applied for 695,500 in CARS funding, and they only gave us $622,000. And so unfortunately, that would have covered any overages. They do have a change order policy, so we'll do that. And so I think with the excess funds that we have, that we are able to fund that. And we're going to have a project meeting once we get the contractor more on board. He's preliminarily talking about starting in late June or early July. So we need to set that date, and then we'll have the project meeting and invite the business owners and inform the public about it.
Any questions for Celia? I will say, given the amount involved, 2.5% doesn't sound extreme. So
Yeah.
that's not bad. Any recommendations for
Yeah, I recommended that we take it to council regular agenda.
regular agenda? Okay, anyone opposed to that? All right, Celia, the next item is also the consideration of the construction and inspection services agreement for the Johnson Drive Rehabilitation Project.
And Brent Morton's going to talk about this.
Okay.
We'll give Celia a little break for a minute. So as Celia just talked about, same project, 2022 CARS project, Lamar to Row. Portion of that project is in Roland Park, as Celia noted. It's a UBAS treatment, restriping from Lamar to Knoll to 3 lanes. Some sidewalk improvements, making everything more ADA compliant, doing some on-street parking repairs. We are getting rid of the decorative asphalt pavers that were installed past Knoll. Those have turned out to be kind of an ADA nightmare, just the way they're set. So a lot of trip hazards, hard to repair. So we're just going back with, regular concrete sidewalk through there. So a lot of improvements through the whole corridor. It's a highly visible project, is why we're recommending full-time inspection through Pfefferkorn Engineering Services. They have worked for us since 2020. They inspected the Lamar project. They've also done our 2021 street program, and they are currently working on our 2022 street program as part-time inspection. We feel full-time inspection is more suited for the Johnson Drive project. Just it's very visible. Traffic control is going to have to be maintained, when any kind of work's being done out there. So we need somebody on site, making sure that's all MUTCD current, and we're following all the guidelines. So just to make sure the project is safe, residents and travelers are safe. So we're recommending full-time inspection for that. They are also, like I said, doing the 2022 street program. So, they're probably going to run in conjunction at some point. So we'll need somebody on both projects, especially with city staff bouncing between projects as well. So we're recommending a contract with Pfefferkorn Engineering Services for $42,410 not to exceed. And that's testing the concrete, density test on the asphalt, just anything that's getting striping, testing that, making sure coming back at the 2-year maintenance bond to make sure everything's good. So staff's recommending going with Pfeffercorn Engineering, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Brent? Yeah, good.
I just recommend we take this to council and consent.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brent. Also related to this project is the interlocal agreement with Roland Park from Celia.
This interlocal just sets out the purpose, the project financing for construction and inspection and the costs. It's a joint project between Mission and Roland Park. And so we'll be funding 79% of the construction cost, and Roland Park will fund 21% of the construction cost. And Roland Park is, I guess they approved this interlocal on Monday night. So this is just a formality to, make sure that we're on the same page with the cities and the financing.
Any questions for this item?
I recommend consent on this one as well.
Consent, sounds good. All right, thank you, Celia. The last item tonight is the action item on the 2023 to 2027 5-year CARS program.
So we submit a 5-year CARS program every year in April or May, and we request funding for 50% of construction for eligible routes. And most of the eligible routes are our arterial, our main road routes, and they're listed in the packet, like Lamar, 51st, Fox Ridge, Johnson Drive, et cetera. So only the first project for 2023 is really the one that's set in stone. The rest that we submit through 27 is just planning for the county. So it's pretty similar to last year's CARS program with one exception. So 2023 is our Fox Ridge project, which we're working on now under design. 2024 is Row. 2025 used to be Knoll, but we're recommending moving 63rd Street in its place. 2026 is Johnson Drive, and 2027 is Knoll. So 63rd Street, the reason we'd like to move that up is really based on the pavement condition index. We don't really know the depth of the pavement. For some reason, that street, we didn't have any borings on. We have them pretty much on all the other streets. So we're planning to do that and figure out really what the scope is, whether we want to put a sidewalk on our side. I know that in our residential streets, we're not doing that. I didn't know if on our CARS routes we wanted to add a sidewalk. So that's something as we get closer, we can present options and decide whether we want to pursue that. And I could go, I didn't know if you wanted me to talk about each project or if you would rather just ask specific questions. That's our hope and plan. So it's really based on, you have to have a minimum of 3,000 vehicles per day. And with COVID going on, the traffic counts were down. So I know we're going to get there with the apartment complex coming in, but hopefully we're there before then. So we plan to petition, and maybe that project gets moved up if we can get it to be CARS eligible. Sure.
Yeah, Ken?
I have a question that goes back to probably the earlier item with regards to the UBES of Johnson Drive. Do we know how effective those humps are at Woodson? And are they going to remain in terms of the traffic calming?
We were planning to leave those in place. Honestly, I don't know how effective they really are because they're so moderate. Hopefully, with reconfiguring to a 3-lane section, as we talked about before, hopefully that will be a form of traffic calming. And but yeah, we're leaving those in place. At least that's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Hillary?
Just follow up to Kristen's. I'm always so annoying about 51st Street, but it's just so bad. It's, again, other than 61st Terrace, it is the worst in Mission. And so I'm wondering what the timeline is for when we'll hear from CARS on if it's eligible.
I don't know the exact process when they consider. I'll have to figure that out. But first we need to get that traffic count up. And so I I know the traffic engineers for the apartment complex did a count, so I need to get that and see if we're close that we can just petition cars. But as soon as we can, we'd like to do that
Okay.
because it is in terrible condition.
Yeah. Kristen and I will post up the bottle of wine. We'll count some cars. It'll be just fine.
Well, I do appreciate having it in the discussion, whenever it does happen, that can be determined, but it's nice to at least get to discuss it with you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Celia tonight? Yeah, Ken.
Just recommend that we take this to council. I don't know if you want it non-consent.
Yeah, that probably is a good idea, just to highlight it to residents as well. It's important, I would say. So
I
thank you,
think a
Celia.
couple of things. We because we'll have to come back, won't we, with a final resolution? Or is this is our one? Okay, this is the year we're going to be one and done.
Yes.
Okay, then I would suggest not consent. Oftentimes we do a one early and then come back in June or July and do a second.
Got it. Exciting stuff. This is really important news. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then last of our action items this evening is an ordinance clarifying trail use and micro-mobility devices from Penn Albany. This item was discussed at the March Community Development Committee meeting and is being presented as an action item following additional review and revision.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So just as review, Parks and Recreation Department staff reviews with Parks, Recreation, and Tree Commission members annually, chapters 230 and 240 of the Mission Municipal Code, and proposes any amendments or changes that may be necessary. So a subcommittee was formed last year, and those committee members were Ben Josie, Ann O'Leary, and Mark Radaziner. They authored a few ordinance changes and proposed those in the April 2021 PRT meeting. Some PRT commission members proposed a few additional changes, and those changes were then amended and presented at the May 2021 PRT meeting, at which point staff felt comfortable reaching out to Mid-American Regional Council to get their review. We also reached out to Payne and Jones, which is Mission's legal counsel, to have them review the ordinance proposal. So the final rendition was put together, reviewed with the PRT Commission in February, and then brought to before you last month. So after review with you, a few council members suggested that staff review and clarify council's considerations. So I reached out to Payne and Jones, as well as former PRT subcommittee member Ben Josie, and we got a list of responses to the questions. First question: is there an all-encompassing term for skateboards, roller skates, rollerblades that could be added for later reference? So if you'll recall, that was originally proposed as a micro-mobility device, but then because of standard traffic ordinance consistency, that was parsed out and kept separate. And so Payne and Jones recommend that we keep that separate because there's really only two instances. And so there's really, the repetition wouldn't be overbearing. Second item was, should the ordinance remove the language excluding transporting children so the pets could be transported without violation? And staff, as well as Payne and Jones, made the appropriate changes that are reflected in the redlined edition of the ordinance. Section 230.090 use less specific language other than walking trails only to give Parks and Recreation Director more latitude in case the need arises. So that change was reflected in the language of the ordinance. Fourth consideration: build in Parks and Recreation maintenance exceptions for being on the trail. And Payne and Jones clarified that paragraph 4, section 230.090 actually already allows the Parks and Recreation Director to authorize vehicles on the trail for purposes of maintenance. So that response is already included in the ordinance. Potentially restricting children from using electric powered riding cars. So this was initiated because a resident saw a resident's child riding along in a electric powered vehicle. So this section in question has been rearranged for clarity. Electric powered riding cars for children are permissible on trails because they are motorized transportation devices as allowed in this section. And so that section essentially says anything under the speed of 20 miles an hour cap, but of course our limit is 15 within the ordinance. And the last item, do we want to differentiate what can be used in internal park trails versus what can be used on regional trails? And so at this time, staff does not believe it's necessary to limit or restrict the types of mobility devices included in the ordinance on either trail type. And staff recommends adopting the proposed ordinances as presented to you in the redlined version for proper trail use etiquette, responding to the increased demand for various recreation modes of transportation, and then also allows us to adapt to the flexibility of trail use moving forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Penn on this issue?
Thank you.
Yeah, Leah.
So is there anywhere in the city that you can use skateboards or roller skates?
Currently,
Yes. Okay.
yeah, not within parks. So the major deterrent for us at this point is our trails are they're really not designed for skateboards in particular. So an ideal path for any kind of skateboard would be concrete. Most of ours are asphalt and not necessarily a level that would make a skateboard traveling easy.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anything else for Penn? I'd entertain a recommendation. Yeah, Ken.
Maybe Ben should do this one since it's his baby.
Sure. Yeah, I'd recommend we take this to council on the regular agenda.
Regular agenda. All right.
Thank you.
Penn. We have no discussion items on our agenda this evening, so that moves us into department updates. Laura, are there any department updates for the Community Development Committee?
Yes, I would ask that Celia give us a quick update on the channel situation along the Rock Creek Channel, and then Penn has a couple of updates that he'd like to provide as well.
So the retaining wall, it's about 150 feet west of Reed's Road, just south of Johnson Drive. If you haven't been down there, it's right next to the location where we had another wall failure and we had to do an emergency repair of the riprap. So this 150 feet, we started inspecting, we inspected all our channels in 2020. And we noted that on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being good condition and 5 being failure, it was rated a 3.65. Well, then we recently had GBA go out in the last 3 weeks and they rated it, they moved the failure rate up to 4.65 out of 5. So we knew we had it in the CIP. I can't remember what year, but we knew that it was, this is one we have to fix right away. Well, we went out there in the last week and started to see a stress fracture along the sidewalk. The sidewalk was depressed and then the grass is kind of creating this big crack. So we really started worrying about it last Friday. We got GBA out on site and Brent has been working with the utilities because we have a gas line, we have an Evergy pole, we have cable and a sanitary sewer crossing. So if this wall collapses, that's going to be a big issue. So he's working with the utilities trying to get those out of the way while we come up with solutions with GBA. And they just sent me a report at 5 o'clock. So we haven't really been able to get into it, but we're trying to get on this right away so that we can address this. And this is part of that focus area in the watershed master plan that we looked at the whole area, but unfortunately we're going to have to get this taken care of before there's before it fails. So we'll be getting back with you as soon as we can. We're really trying to push through this and get it resolved.
Yeah, Kristen.
think it was about 150,000 is what I think. Yes. Oh. So if they were in their own private easement, we would be required to pay, but I think these are all, we're still looking into it, but these are all on their dime.
Yeah, appreciate you looking into that. And
We'll keep you posted.
yeah.
So in the Parks and Recreation front, we've got a meeting you should put on your calendars. Love to have council support. It's going to be Thursday, May 12th, here at the Powell Community Center. We're going to have a conceptual park design review with the neighbors and the community at large. So I've got large poster size renderings of each of the parks and the conceptual design. So since some of you have been on hand for those discussions, it'd be great for residents to kind of reach out and engage with council as well as Parks and Recreation staff. And that's going to be down in rooms A and B, 6 p.m., Thursday, May 12th. You may have noticed the crane that was here at the Powell Community Center Monday and Tuesday. We got the last of the big units finally installed. Took a while to fabricate those and get shipped on site, but it's comforting to have a closed loop system now. Lots of wind and rain prevented them from being efficient, but as I learned in my OSHA 30-hour training, their job hazard analysis paid off because there were no injuries. The crane operator, I'm sure he was on pins and needles, but it was amazing just watching there's very little movement from side to side as he installed those units. And you may feel the temperature a little bit more comfortable in here as a result of getting that closed loop system. So pretty pleased with, excuse me, with that. And the second item is the Anderson tennis courts. So each one of these rain days, I've been driving by just to make sure that there's no water pooling up. And to my amazement and excitement, there's no pooling water. It's flat as can be. The fence fabric has been installed. The lights are installed. The control panel is ready to be tested once it dries out. Excuse me. And then the last item for installation are the gates, and the entire fence will be finished. So pretty exciting. In another 2 weeks, they'll put on the tennis surface markings, which will be same standard 2 tennis courts. And then we'll have 2 pickleball courts on each side. So 4 total pickleball courts. And the shade seating system is still somewhere on a ship in the Pacific. So we anticipate that'll be here by mid to late June, but our project and tennis courts will be delivered on schedule by June 1. Thanks.
Yeah, Hillary.
Hi, Penn. Well, first of all, unfortunately, Trent and I have our Ward 1 meeting on May 12th, so we won't be able to be at
Dang
that
it.
meeting, unfortunately, but
We'll come bring them to
we'll
your
come
meeting.
speeding over. Yeah. But could you talk a little bit more about your plan for the conceptual parks meeting, just considering how interesting past ones have been and just kind of your plan for the structure of the meeting?
Yeah, so you may recall we initially began with a education process. So we wanted to make sure the architect had an opportunity and the landscapers to weigh in and take the considerations from the parks master plan and essentially educate the neighbors. I feel like that worked well with a couple parks and didn't work well with Broadmoor in particular. What did work well in every iteration of our discussions was having the renderings at the front, having a quick introduction of individuals who were really the people who know about the projects and the steps that were taken, and then really just engaging with the neighbors and residents, getting their feedback, documenting it, and moving on from there. So that's going to be the general format. Going to be open, drop in, discuss with staff, with council, with Confluence, and and some other stakeholders.
So to be clear, in relation to the dog park, you're going to present Broadmoor and Streamway as two options and say, these are just ideas. And we're looking for feedback, thoughts, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay. smart.
Correct. Yeah, we'll just make sure that we're perfectly clear. And I'll probably put them next to each other so that I can be there to kind of mediate any discussions that I hear getting a little bit too boisterous. But I think that'll serve our community well, give them an opportunity just to engage with staff one-on-one and
Last question. What's the outreach for getting folks to come up? Just, website and
Mhm.
usual.
Social media,
Okay.
website, we're going to put it on the calendar. It's going out on a constant contact email Friday. And then we've reached out to 200 feet with all sides of the park. And so we're going to mail out hard copies of a flyer invitation. I anticipate that'll get virtually everyone who's interested in showing up.
Anything else for Penn? Yeah, Kristen.
So what happened to the parking lot back here with the fence? Did somebody run into it and fence when you get there?
Down here in the south? Yes, yes. So that was wind blown and it was attached to the top level of block. And so all it took was a few strong winds and it cascaded one edge, which then pulled down the rest. So we reached out to the original, you may recall this happened a year and a half ago. And it cost $16,000 to replace just that section. With that cost, we were looking at alternatives. And so we haven't heard back from a few vendors. There's a couple of vinyl replacement types that just don't meet our standard. There's a couple alternatives. Wood in particular has been brought. I don't know that that's the right look either. So we're really trying to determine what the best look for a replacement is without getting into that 10,000 plus cost. Because that was covered by insurance before because a patron drove over it. This time it was just wind related. Yeah, you bet. Great question. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ben. It is now 7:33 PM, and with no further discussion, that concludes this meeting of the Community Development Committee. Again, this video will be made public on the website at missionks.org. Thank you very much. Turning over to Chairwoman Crane.
I'm going to give us a 5-minute break and I have Candy up here. Help yourself. I guess I was going to ask something in that committee meeting, but I can go to the finance one. I just have a comment across the board that doesn't have anything to do with what's on the agenda, but I think it's prudent right now. Got another problem with Planet Aid and people dropping stuff. The one that's by Salsa Grill has paint cans all around it, 2 bags overflowing. I think we need to come up as we look at beautification of this community. People are doing such wonderful work. And then to have that, it just looks horrible. And those are businesses with restaurants and things that people from out of town come to look at our things and buy things. And I think we really need some kind of a policy with these companies. I'm not saying it's them, it's whoever's dumping things, but we need something in play, especially as the summer comes about, when people are walking the streets and it's nice out, it needs to look appropriate. And we've had this problem before. Thanks. Okay, it is now 7:40, and I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee to order. This meeting is being held in person, but in consideration of the ongoing COVID-19 health concerns, we are offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionks.org. The public is also invited to participate in this meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you're part of the in-person group tonight, please raise your hand, but stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Also be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionks.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. If there's any member of the public who would like to comment now, please state that. I see none. We'll move into public hearings, and we don't have any public presentations this evening, so we'll move into our 4 action items. First action item is the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Emily Randall.
Yes, thank you. And again, on behalf of Audrey McClanahan, I present the Finance and Administration Committee meetings from April for your review and acceptance.
Do you have a recommendation?
Recommend accept.
Everybody okay with that? Great. Next action item is the presentation of the 2021 audit results. Brian Scott, will you please introduce the representative from BT and Company who will be sharing the results with council this evening?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. For those of you who are new, our fiscal year begins on January 1st and ends December 31st. So usually by the 4th quarter, around November, December, I'm pulling my hair out, trying to get everything wrapped up and kind of put the fiscal year to bed and get ready for the audit. So we finished our audit for fiscal year 2021, which ended December 31st, 2021. And I say we, I really have to give credit to Debbie Long, who's our account manager. She's the one that does the yeoman share of the work. I just answer a couple questions here and there. So really it's all her that does the work. But our auditors do a good job of providing some guidance to us and then reviewing our financial statements and then providing an opinion on those financial statements. We have with us tonight Stacy Hammond and Dusty Wagner from BT and Company, and they'll give an overview of the audit and answer any questions you might have.
Good evening, everyone. Dusty and I are pleased to be here with you this evening to present the results of the city's annual financial statement audit. I believe all of you have received 2 electronic documents. One of those is a copy of the audited financial statements, and another is a report that's addressed to the mayor and members of the city council. That report that's addressed to the mayor and members of the city council really puts into writing items that our audit standards require us to present about the results of the city's annual financial statement audit. And it also forms the basis of the presentation that Dusty and I will do tonight. If you would like to open up that report electronically to follow along, the first thing we need to visit with you about is our responsibility in performing the city's audit. We did perform the city's financial statement audit in accordance with what we call generally accepted auditing standards, as well as standards set forth in the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. All of those standards together require us to perform procedures in order to obtain reasonable assurance that the city's financial statements are free from material misstatement. As far as the procedures we performed, we did examine on a test basis evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in the financial statement. We also reviewed the city's accounting policies and practices and looked at the significant estimates that management of the city makes that go into the financial statements. The most important thing that Dusty and I will be telling you tonight is that as a result of the procedures we performed, we did determine that the city's financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Therefore, we issued what we call an unmodified audit opinion, which is the best kind of opinion that the city of Mission can receive. Moving on in the next section of the report to the mayor and city council, there's a section called accounting policies and practices where we would bring to your attention any new accounting policies that the city might have adopted, new accounting standards adopted, significant or unusual transactions, or significant estimates. There's nothing in any of those areas that we're required to report this year, except that the city does have 2 significant estimates. They're the same estimates that the city had last year, and those are the other post-employment benefits liability and the net pension liability that results from the city's participation in capers. Our responsibility as auditors is to look at those significant estimates and to make sure that management of the city has a reasonable process in place for measuring and recording those significant estimates. If you have the report open and flip to page 4, you will see our summary of the city's significant accounting estimates. And in the final column by each estimate, we do conclude that the city has a reasonable process in place to measure and record those accounting estimates. At this point in time, I'd like to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Dusty to visit a little bit about adjusting entries.
All right. For the adjusting entries that we had to begin our audit, all of the entries that we had were what we considered to be client prepared entries. The city system of internal control recognized every entry that was needed to be able to convert the financial statements to accrual basis. The entries that are included are past the representation letter and are on the last page, the last 2 pages, and they are entity-wide entries. And those entity-wide entries are entries that are needed to convert the city's financials to accrual basis in compliance with GASB 34. So I'm proud to say that there are no issues or any internal control deficiencies related to any of the entries that we made, because the city system picked up every single one of those entries to be able to get those taken care of. Also with the audit, if we flip back to the report, we noted that there were not any uncorrected misstatements related to the audit this year. In addition, one of the new items that we had to look for this year was related to other information. And other information, what our responsibility is with that is to look to make sure that it conforms with what the city presents, matches to what our audit report does. And we were proud to say that with the city's introductory section and statistical sections, easy to say, we did not identify any material inconsistencies with what the city presented back to what was compared to the audit report. Now, with the audit themselves, with the observations about the audit process, if there were any disagreements with management, consultations with other accountants, any significant issues discussed with management, any significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit, or any difficult or contentious matters that required consultation, we would note those in that report. And we're also proud to say there were none of those items as well. The last thing that is presented in the report is right past the significant estimates that Stacy's discussed, and that is the representation letter. The representation letter is provided to us by management, which indicates that this is the final step in the audit and that the audit is ready to be finalized. The items in the representation letter, these are items that the city is saying, these are the items that we presented to you. We are ready for acceptance. We present this information to you in the representation letter so that you can fulfill your fiduciary responsibilities related to the audit. So as we go with the audit, I definitely want to thank Brian, and especially Debbie. I know we bugged her a lot. I know she felt audited at the end for all of their hard work. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks so much for that. I didn't know if you'd be able to speak to how these findings compare with other municipalities in the area and if it's abnormal or normal.
Nothing that we presented to you tonight would be considered abnormal compared to other municipalities in the area that we audit. You had a good, clean audit. that if you'd had any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls, we would have been required to report those in this report to the mayor and members of the city council, and you didn't. So that's really an excellent result. It's the best kind of result that the city of Mission can achieve.
Great. Thank you so much.
Anybody have kudos to your company and kudos to our staff?
Absolutely.
Can I have a recommendation to take this forward?
Recommend that we take it forward, non-consent.
Great, thank you.
And we will spend more time as we move into the budget process, looking at fund balances. I mean, we, if you noticed, we added to general fund balance reserves again this year. So those are all things that we'll highlight in more detail when we dive into the budget.
Great. Thank you so much. You guys do a great job. You make the city look great. Thank you. And thanks to Debbie Long. She's not here, but please pass along our congratulations. The next item we have is consideration of a special event permit for Young Life, and that's Laura Smith.
Yes, thank you. So in 2021, Young Life Shawnee Mission submitted a special event application for an event that they held on property at 5935 Beverly, which is Beverly Park, as well as the adjacent parking lot at 5945 Beverly. It was a fundraising event for them, which included barbecue, live music, and alcohol sales, ticketed, and apparently it was very successful, and they would like to replicate that and do that over again in 2022. In order to allow them or grant permission for the alcohol to be consumed within the public park, it does require the city council to waive a prohibition of that in our parks. And so they have submitted their special event application. They have, which has been reviewed internally by staff, and they have submitted their application to the Kansas Department of Revenue for a temporary alcohol permit at both the parking lot location, for both the parking lot location and the park location. And so staff would recommend, based on their application submission and the lack of any issues with the event last year, that council consider waiving those ordinance requirements to allow for this event to proceed on June 3rd, 2022 from 6 to 10 p.m.
Go ahead, Ken.
Recommend that we take this to council consent.
Does anyone have concerns, or are you okay with moving forward? Great. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it. Okay, the last item is consideration of a waiver of section 600.040B of Mission's Municipal Code for the Milhaven HOA picnic, and that's Emily Randall.
Yes, thank you. Very similarly, but slightly different. The Milhaven HOA has asked to repeat what they also did in 2021 to go to Mohawk Park on August 6th from 4 to 10 p.m. This is an event not with alcohol sales, but for BYOB. So residents can bring their own food and drink. And we'd like to similarly recommend the waiver of prohibition of alcohol consumption in a public park, in public spaces.
Great. Ken?
Go ahead and recommend the same, that we take to council on consent.
Great. Anybody have any comments? Or thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. We have just one discussion item tonight on the agenda, and that's related to the upcoming selection of committee chairs and vice chairs. Laura, can you please provide an update?
Absolutely. And there's really not much to discuss. We'd just like to make sure that it's on everyone's radar screen that under section 130.010B of our city code, on or before the first city council meeting in June, the city council shall vote to elect a chairperson and vice chairperson of both committees. And so in order to meet that requirement, we have historically included that as a new business item on the May legislative agenda. And so we would anticipate that appearing in a couple of weeks under new business.
Thank you. Okay, last we have department updates, and that, Laura, would be you as well. Oh, I'm sorry, Ken.
I just wanted to, in relationship to that, make it clear that since I'm president of the council, I do not intend on being vice chair for the CDC. So that position is vacant for whoever wishes to consider it.
Thanks.
department update. I just wanted to call attention to a couple of our special events. I know you know, but we'll have the summer sneak peek tomorrow. We are undaunted. We will be moving indoors. So I would really appreciate actually if you all have networks you could share the event to. It's a new event, first of all, so there's not a built-in audience. And with the change of venue to move in indoors, we'd like everyone to know that the vendors are still coming out and that there will still be great shopping. So we just modified that event. So we will be in the South Gym, so everyone can come in the regular South Community Center entrance. And then right there, you'll have the market pop-up and fitness demos and all the sales and fun that we were already planning. And also Cinco de Mayo $5 vouchers for our local restaurants. So still would love to see as many people as possible. And it has had some traction online, but we'd love a last minute boost, especially with the forecast being what it is. We're trying to be rain or shine, just like we are in the summer, but the forecast looks pretty bleak. So we decided to change. And then also, I think you're aware the citywide garage sale is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we have that list posted and has been shared on social and electronic media. And then also we have hard copies available at the community center and the city hall. And unlike the sneak peek, that's a long standing event. So we have lots of interest and built-in participation there. So that'll be this weekend.
Thanks, Emily. Does anybody have any comments or questions for staff or? Sure. Okay.
We're going to start gathering at 8:30. There'll be continental breakfast and lots of coffee. And the retreat formally starts at 9. I sent just right before 5 today your retreat packet that has the agenda, some additional logistical thoughts and recommendations, as well as the first quarter project status update. So looking forward to being with everybody here. Just a question, and I will touch base with the facilitator, but I'm assuming we want to do just a kind of similar U-shaped setup like this for, is that conducive? I'll confirm. Okay, I'll confirm. Okay, well, I think we can, well, these tables are closer than we were in February as well. So we can certainly accommodate that. Just a reminder, since we won't see you again before we're scheduled, that we're looking to do the field trip to the Red Line exhibit at the Johnson County Museum next Wednesday, May 11th. The plan is to meet there at the museum at 3:30. Tour the exhibit. The museum actually closes at 4:30, and then we'll return here to Mission for just a quick bite for anyone who's interested, and certainly any plus ones that you want to invite to come with you are welcome to join us for that event. And then unbeknownst to him, I'm going to put Brian on the spot a little bit today, but one of the things that Councilmember Kring and I have talked about over the years is doing a better job of sort of on the spot recognition. And I learned yesterday that Brian went above and beyond and out of his way to make sure that one of our local businesses was able to have a plumbing inspection that allowed them to be open and not have to wait. Our building official, Jim Brown, happens to be on vacation this week. And as you know, in a small shop, when you're the only person on staff who does something, that can be challenging, but he didn't have to do it. But thank you, Brian, for taking the time and making the effort to make that happen for that business. Appreciate that. And that's all I have this evening.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Brian. Good work. Okay, it is now 8:00 p.m., record time tonight for both. And with no further discussion, this concludes the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee. Again, this video will be made public on our website at missionks.org. Thank you.